Greetings. It's Thursday, May the 1st, 2025. I'm Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column, and this is the Midweek Report. The trade war between China and the United States continues. While there can be no real winner in such a conflict, China definitely has more to lose and the potential for losing it. The Chinese Communist Party, especially President Xi, are susceptible to a malady that can best be called pride-itis, a combination of out-of-control pride, ego, insecurity, with a bit of inferiority and superiority complex mixed in. Many ultranationalist types tend to have this condition, and China has it bad. Such conditions have triggered shooting wars in the past, which is worrying. And this happens when nations are dependent on doing business with each other, and that stops. And when that happens, it can really go bad. The most notable example of that happening is the Pacific War between the United States and Japan from 1941 to 1945. Do you think Pearl Harbor was attacked just because the Japanese felt like doing it? No. It was over oil, a war over oil and over deteriorating business conditions dating back many years. Did you know that American car makers had factories in Japan in the 1930s? And the reason they had to pack up and leave was part of the reason why the Pacific side of World War II occurred. It's a long story there, but one worth looking into. Now, both the Trump administration and China are digging in their heels in this thing. China has far more potential for social instability than the United States does, but both countries are not going to have happy populations if this thing really goes downhill. Humans of any kind do irrational things when living conditions become intolerable, as much of history has demonstrated. There's too much pride on both sides of the Pacific. Neither side seems to want to, give. And there seems to have been quite a bit of miscalculation in Beijing and Washington, D.C. China and the U.S. are bracing for shortages, factory closings, and job losses on both sides of the ocean they share. And unless cooler, less prideful heads prevail, it's going to be a long and hot summer. As the French economist Frédéric Bastiat said more than 150 years ago, when goods don't cross borders, soldiers will. Soldiers will. And speaking of bad economics, Cuba seems to be in more trouble than usual in that department. You're not hearing this anywhere, pretty much. Cuba's in trouble to the point of leading to serious social unrest, which, according to many sources, is bubbling ferociously just under the surface. People are very open about their contempt for the country and how poor it is and how they can't go anywhere and how they don't have all the things that other people do. You see, Cuba depends a lot on tourism, and tourism means people coming from affluent countries, and when you are mixing with people from affluent countries, you begin to realize how affluent your country is not. And this is the Achilles heel of that prison island. The Castro brothers who ran that country for decades are now long gone, and the current leader has nowhere near their charisma or loyalty, and probably not too much of their schmutz either. His name is Diaz-Canel. Have you ever heard of him? Most people haven't. He's been completely in charge of Cuba for a couple of years now, and he's not doing too well. The global trade wars and economic upheaval that's resulting is not helping the Cuban economy. Sugar and cigars can only go so far in the global marketplace. While a full-blown Castro-like revolution is highly unlikely, if things do continue in the way they're going, that little long-suffering island could be ripe for a coup driven from the streets. And that could happen sooner than later. Cuba is something to watch. Now, back to our neighborhood. The executive branch of the United States government is now in a full-on conflict with the judiciary. And unless this straightens out, it will take down the whole show. The arrest of an activist judge in Wisconsin a few days ago for protecting an illegal invader could be just the beginning. There are almost daily news stories of bizarre court decisions or actions on the personal level by judges at all levels of the court system. Everything from dealing with immigration issues to gangs to all sorts of crazy things. This is a crisis the likes of which the U.S. has never faced. Now, over the past several decades, and almost entirely at the hands of liberal state and federal governments, all sorts of arguably unqualified people have been made judges. And this includes a couple who are sitting on the Supreme Court. What you're seeing is the end result of social and legal education that has created several generations of inept incompetence at the highest levels of government. Judges who think they have the power to make law and policy, something that was unthinkable even a couple of generations ago. It's hard to imagine this situation turning itself around and not continuing on the road it's on. This will not lead to a good place. Too many of the judges on the bench in the United States obviously do not have any respect for the country's Constitution or the laws of which they are supposed to uphold. This cannot continue. But what can be done about it at this point? Well, your guess is as good as mine, and the situation is worrying. Meanwhile, the long-discussed mineral deal between Ukraine and the United States has finally been signed, an important step toward the peace deal to end the war between Russia and Mr. Zelensky. Nothing new on the situation between India and Pakistan. Let's hope it stays that way. Now, speaking of wars, by now you have heard that the aircraft carrier USS Harry S. Truman lost a fighter plane a few days ago. The F-15 in question rolled off the deck and into the sea not too far from Yemen, where planes from the Truman have been conducting airstrikes. No one was killed. One sailor was reported injured. What you're not hearing so much is that the reason for the accident seems to have been the carrier being forced to make a hard turn to avoid a missile fired at it by Houthi rebels on shore. And if that doesn't make you concerned, it really should. Unlike their World War II ancestors, modern aircraft carriers are not armored. They're not designed to take direct hits and are dependent on their own aircraft and other warships to defend them. And if a ship like the Truman, which carries thousands of sailors, can be threatened by what has been described as a ragtag bunch of desert fanatics, what would happen going up against another country with real firepower and real resources and a lot more know-how? Iran, for example. The Trump administration is playing with fire in that part of the world. Because if an aircraft carrier that has many thousands of crew members aboard is hit by one or more missiles and sinks quickly, more Americans would be killed than died at Pearl Harbor in 1941 or died on September 11th in 2001. That should be sobering, because one lucky hit can set off a war. That's something to think about this morning, and something to avoid. That's it for today. If you appreciate my work, please like, subscribe, and share. Share with your friends and share with your enemies and hope they become friends. And please consider a paid subscription. It keeps the lights on literally and figuratively. I can be reached at feedback@aureliancolumn.com. That's feedback@aureliancolumn.com. I'm up on X. My handle there is MICCAMPEN. That's MICCAMPEN. This podcast originates at Substack. My address there is aureliancolumn.substack.com. Until we meet again, be good, be safe, be vigilant, and remember, Clown World and the Deep State must be destroyed. Good day.